Well, things will inevitably be self-evident, and you can either face the evidence, which some of you will be forced to face whatever evidence in your world, whether it's in your own biophysical health or your community and the economical impacts of whatever choices we have made as a society. And some people will have the luxury of the distractions that you see all over the internet. And so you choose your own adventure. And hey, that's fine. We all are being given a choice to do whatever within the confines of the law. So I didn't go on yesterday because my husband was home for half a day. And so I hung out with him. And I just didn't really feel like saying anything. What's there really to say? I mean, there's a lot to say, but I could have said things when he left for work. I could have went on Facebook Live, after 12 and did whatever. But, sometimes you just got to let things just ride. That's what I decided to do. So, So I've been able to finally come full circle around everything, around the whole Dr. Phil stuff. I've been able to explain myself in every aspect that people had questions. I even took a look at my own childhood to figure out why everything seems so familiar around the pandemic and the kickoff. And then where we're headed into a type of restriction. I remember being on restriction all the time. Well, why is that? Well, my household was a place where it wanted me to rebel. My household was a place for rebelling. It set up situations to develop a rebellious type of outcome. So I had no choice but to react to my environment and then obviously have consequences. And sometimes I would get strategic. Though, as a child, parents know the strategies. They don't always tell you they know what you're doing, but parents know all the different strategies children develop when they're trying to get out of something. So anyway, I understand what it's like to be on restriction because situations were developed for me to rebel and strategize my way out. And sometimes it's obviously... when you're a kid, you don't know what parents know, so you just do what you do, and the parents are like, oh, okay, she's lying. Oh, okay, she's doing this. Oh, okay. And so they see how you react in stressful situations. And so that's an interesting thing. So this whole future we're going into, which is a type of restriction and surveillance, absolutely. I was under surveillance as a child, of course. Not much privacy. And that was the future I was going into. I was conditioned for autonomy, no privacy, and being on restriction, under lockdown, and staying home more than not and staying safe. Though I did go out there and travel around everything, everywhere the last 50 years, and finally, within the last 10 years, stayed in one place. But it doesn't surprise me now as I look back on everything why I felt so familiar with the beginning of the pandemic when people were told, stay home, stay safe, wear a mask. And I'm like, I've been at home for so long. When I was a kid, I was always on restrictions. So now the future we're heading into, which is going to be a type of restriction. Smart cities, yes. But why? Well, there's the thing. It's about how we raise our children. That's what it all comes down to. Why we're heading into this world. Because the system has watched how people raise their children. What happens when you raise your children in situation A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. And they have all the evidence to show you the outcomes of how children end up as adults based upon how the parents reared them. And so in the 80s, that was full of affluence and access to resources. And of course, the video games and the excess, okay? Toys and parties and drugs and sexuality When all that is your fingertips and parents are like, hey, do whatever. Parents are out at work and kids pretty much left to their own devices, and yeah, and they're given everything, right? So you see that side of most of society, and of course exposed to some of these really intense movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Then you see what happens when you have a kid that doesn't get exposed to that stuff. Like, I knew I was way behind most of my peers. I didn't have the experience like my peers did. Whether it was sexuality or any other types of thing. Drugs, I didn't do drugs as a kid. I barely even did drugs when I was even like a teen. I mean, what did I do? I smoked cigarettes, and maybe I had one situation where I used those little papers, right? That you suck on, and maybe you see stuff, maybe you don't. I mean, but even then, that wasn't really. It was the pot, yeah, in my 19. But I was definitely not as experienced as my peers. I was a major late bloomer. And so when you're not exposed to your peers who are living fast, living hard, like little adults at 12, 13, and 14, with so much exposure to adult type of situations, yeah, you grow up very fast. Well, I grew up really slow, like seriously slow. And then finally, during this climate change, I've now caught up and even potentially, would you say, surpassed some of my peers. And maybe that was intentional, but yeah, when you were raised very differently than most of your peers, you're going to have a different way of doing things. You're going to come off weird and rebellious and criminal. I mean, you see even some of the Hollywood stars, some of their mugshots as teenagers. They did stupid shit. When I was a teenager, I did stupid shit, ran away from home, and shoplifted. Will my mugshot come out later on down the road? Potentially. You never know. But a lot of these Hollywood stars who were groomed for great things had a troubled childhood because they had to go through an aggressive programming that was probably different than most of the kids around them. Okay? So now it makes sense why I feel like I'm mostly different than most people, why most people don't even understand me, and why most people think I'm crazy, why most people think whatever. And I'm okay with that. I finally have come to terms with that. And I've embraced that part of it, which means that I have much more insight on what's going on today because I've had that exposure of being the guinea pig on how those things will roll out. I had my own 9/11 as a child between my sister and I because of a contrived situation that caused us to be at each other's throats and to see who was going to rise up in that occasion. And of course, I rose up in that occasion and, yes, did not earn, a relationship that would be close in the future, but it was never meant to be. We were not meant to be close as siblings. So I had my own 9/11 of a contrived situation. Okay? And so with that said, then I see the rollout of what's going on now and all the different restrictions, the fear of this and that and whatever. Fear being used as a way of leveraging people. Fear of air, food, and water. Fear of climate change. Fear of lockdowns. Fear of pandemic. Fear of government. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Remember Alex Jones back then was saying that they were using, was it Charlotte Iserbyt found documents that said they were using Russian methodologies to get people on the same page for whatever reasons, and yeah. And you never know what people knew when they knew it. You never know what is behind all of the storylines that are out there that cause people to love or hate any country and their leader and their way of life. That's why I don't love or hate Russia. I don't love or hate Ukraine. I don't love or hate the US. I don't love or hate any political party. I don't love or hate any religion or political thought process or scientific dogma because I understand it's all types of storylines and programming getting people to react in a specific way with a very intentional outcome. And if you don't understand the outcome, you'll fall easily for the contrived storylines that cause you to have an opinion on one side or the other. When you fail to see what the other arguments are, then you'll be very predictable in your reactions to whatever. Okay, so I figured out that with the Rosicrucians, they're using all different storylines out there. The Old Testament, New Testament, the Greco-Roman Empire, all the different Greek mythology and all that. And so, yeah. So I know the Rosicrucians use a lot of things, use a lot of stories for whatever's being rolled out today. So maybe now you'll see why I walked away from politics. Okay. All right, block. When I say why I walked away from politics and reactivism, your reactivism were used as a tool to take down yourself as well as your society. And you condition people to expect major changes. And so all of us have been radicalized ever since we were given information that was new and different that we needed to warn people about. Because that's when you have an immune system that's working for you, when you're not under the influence of drugs, sex, alcohol, and other herbal remedies and whatever, and you have an immune system that works for you, and someone says that there is danger, whether they tell you or you feel it, what do you naturally do? You're going to go and warn people, play telephone. And of course, you know how that goes. The message does get mangled in the process. But that's the thing, is that we were all radicalized with information way back even the 1960s, 50s, 40s, 30s. And it's been passed down from generation to generation. So you expected change, but what kind? I don't know. Conditioned for it, and then also be told to be in fear of it. And here is what you do to resist it. And so maybe now you'll see why I walked away from politics and reactivism. Your reactions were used as a tool to take down yourself as well as your society. And you conditioned people to expect major changes. Okay, so I also fell for it too. What's done is done. So that's the thing with what's going on with Trump. I just realized the last couple weeks that I don't know if he said he was like Julius Caesar, but then everything kind of came together with the conspiracy world and then what his position is today. Yeah, he'll be the last president if he does get voted into office. I don't know how that's going to come out, because we're heading into a Roman Empire type of thing. The Republic's gone. The Republic has been gone for a while. Okay, we're heading into an empire. It's called the New World Order, where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, that will govern the conduct of nations. That whole speech that George Bush Sr. said back in the 80s. And so when Octavius avenges the destruction of Caesar, because Caesar was destroyed by 40 senators, or destroyed by the Democrats, and then 300 people or more, tens of thousands, died in a bloody civil war, because then Octavius and Augustus went up against the opposing forces that destroyed Caesar, and then that's the fall of the Roman Republic, turns into the Roman Empire. And so we are living a Shakespearean tragedy, Julius Caesar, because now that Trump will be ousted from New York, and then he has to go and face another trial at the end of the month with hush money. So defrauding the public and hush money, and you can say it was all contrived and politically motivated, just like Navalny is saying with Putin. If they have the evidence, regardless if you believe it was contrived or if it's real, okay, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. You can say it's a conspiracy and all that, okay. Well, he was allowed to come into power and to do whatever, but I guess he had to take it a step further. He could have let just Biden, win and not keep pressing the issue, but, hindsight's 2020. And so the system knew if he went either direction. If he let Biden win, okay, fine. If he then opposed Biden and then started doing things to, sustain his power, Well, they already knew he broke laws anyways a long time ago, but that didn't need to come out then. It'll come out when it needs to come out. That's why you don't want to break the laws. Because eventually, when you break the law, regardless, it'll catch up with you. You don't want to break the law in your body, and you want to break the law out there. You want to stay so pure and abiding by the laws of life that you don't die from your own hand, and then you don't inevitably get thrown in jail because of breaking the law out there. So that's why I live a pretty, I would say, a puritanical life, because I know now how aggressive the environment is and how aggressive the system is when it comes to law and order. We're heading into some pretty aggressive law and order times, and people will be dealing with consequences to their actions. The system is going to come down very hard on so many people if they decide to rebel against what's going on. Okay? And so, in other words, Trump is ousted from New York. The right wing will avenge his death and sacrifice many New Yorkers, even their own kind, as retribution. Of course, the trucking industry is full of right-wing patriots who will do exactly what they're expected to do, shut down America, like cutting off one's nose to spite one's face. And so, avenging Caesar's murder, Octavian and Antony collaborated to defeat the forces of assassination plot leaders Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus in 42 BC. At Philippi in northern Greece, tens of thousands died in the bloody battle, and the defeated the Brutus and Cassius each committed suicide. Okay, so that's the kind of craziness that we're heading into. It's already happening. So I'm saying you really have to prepare for some shit. And if you are in New York, figure out how you're going to survive that. Okay, the trains left the station. You couldn't. Everything started in 9/11. You couldn't stop what was already set to happen. It's just a matter of, do you have time now to figure out how to strategize your survival? And so, death of Caesar, Julius Caesar, was assassinated by about 40 Roman senators on the Ides of March. Okay? I don't know who these people are. All right. Block Brad Wolf. The Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar's death resulted in a long series of civil wars that ended in the death of the Roman Republic and the birth of the Roman Empire. The New World Order. That's what we're heading into. The system already told you what they were going to do. There was no way you were going to stop it. There was no fucking way. They already figured out your reactions. They already gave you the arguments. They already changed the climate out there. They're not walking into your house, so you can't bring a case against them. You have to be able to survive the environment. Climate change, economic change, everything changed. And so the future is, will you use the internet for sex or academics? Because you're either trying to get hormone release from your audience using love, hate, and masturbate, or you're trying to relearn everything in the world. So you become a very well-rounded person with tolerance. There's a place for everyone, and the system is watching you. And so that's why we're heading into these types of 15-minute cities that you've seen. I've even seen some of the prototypes out there in Arizona and other places. And yeah, they're pretty compact. Some places you've seen that are like high rise, they're like 20,000 people, 1 million people in one little area. Yeah. But remember, the system also is changing the climate, and those who don't have what it takes to deal with climate change, they will treat themselves to death when you think about it. Starve themselves of food, take as many remedies as possible, and then go in and out of the hospitals, carving out growths or just be in pain because of the body's trying to push things out that the person is resisting. Okay, so we're heading into a type of restriction. You're going to have to earn your freedom, and it's going to be for a while. I couldn't tell you what it will be like at the end result, but I will say it'll be beautiful, but the process to get there is going to be brutal. I'm sure the end result is going to be amazing when we have less people on this earth, and the people who are on this earth are tolerant and intellectually capable, evolutionary, finally been broken down from being such a rebellious person, always looking for revolution, just finally saying, okay, we don't want to keep repeating the past. And Africa is going to have to go through that same thing themselves. There's going to be major geological changes, major climate changes, major geographical changes, some of which people right now are experiencing floods and hurricanes and storms and tornadoes. The weather has switched. California is getting tornadoes. They're getting tornado warnings, tornado watches. In Sacramento, the Central Valley, they're getting flooded over there in Santa Barbara. Mudslides. Come on. You're seeing the writings on the wall. The system's been telling you climate change is coming. And by 2050, yeah, parts of San Francisco will be underwater. Parts of New York will be underwater. I mean, Manhattan and Long Island and all that. Parts of Florida will be underwater. The system is trying to tell you, how are you going to survive it? Okay, so the change. Menopause is a change. Climate change is a change. Economical changes, New World Order, all that, it's all a change. I mean, when I woke up when I was sleeping and I wake up and I'm like, okay, I can't go to sleep. I'm going to listen to whatever is new on YouTube. And I have so many things I subscribe to. And so I have these usual videos that come up. And one of the videos by Steve Ram, and he was saying, oh my gosh, New York's going to get shut down and da-da-da. And here's the resistance and da-da-da. And I'm just like, oh, shit. Okay. And so, and then I woke up and I was just listening to him like, oh, shit. So New York is going to be shut down because of all the people, the truckers, the right-wing people. Oh, shit. They're going to avenge what's going on with Trump because of that $350 million lawsuit or that he has to pay because of fraud, and he can't practice real estate in New York for 3 years. And so we know what's going to happen. Shit's going to happen to New York. And so I was up at 2 this morning and I couldn't go back to sleep because I'm like, oh my God, this is where it's going to begin. And so it made sense that New York would be the first place for things to actually fall. Why would New York be? Because that's the first state that when we became independent back in 1776, that was the first colony, New York. So the change, we all die every night as we go to sleep, experiencing one of the optimal stages of sleep characterized as rapid eye movement or REM sleep. REM, non-REM stage of sleep is the time to repair, regenerate, and align function systems to work together relative to the purpose. It is the time to increase one's intelligence in memory and learning, assuming the person has provided the system with proper amounts of food necessary for optimal output. Okay, so every night the system must sort out what is needed and what is not needed, and every microbe in the gut is categorized to be used for fuel or waste or the infrastructure within the body. Every day the body is exposed to diverse microbes, experiences aggressive reactions to the environment, and even is told stories about air, food, and water. The body is told that sickness is evil, take remedies and surgeries to resist the changes that do happen overnight when the body is sorting out the offspring microbes in all systems reacting to the remedies and surgeries the body was forced to undergo. In other words, the body is told to stay in a relative state of equilibrium or in a cured state of existence until the body is forced to change. And that is what's going on right now. You were told, don't ever change, stay the same, go through your traditions, do this, this, and this, and the system is trying to introduce change. People resist it. So people resist it and they go do their surgeries and they still do their procreation and they take all their remedies and they still consume the same way they did before. And then the environment changes and it forces people to change. Now you have the environment bringing up people's immune systems to the surface, and then those microbes attack other people, causing then an influential change in their world that they have to deal with. Or if they don't feel it, it then burrows inside until another frequency change or climate change, and it wakes up and replicates those microbes, and that person now is dealing with a fast-moving cancer and potentially even a died suddenly. And so what you've been taught the last couple hundred years of resisting change and taking remedies and doing all the surgeries in a slower frequency environment, no big deal. You expect it to die maybe at 80 or 90. you hope you live that long. But now with the climate change, people doing their traditions in a different environment will cause then a rapid, accelerated expectation called die suddenly and premature death and premature menopause in some women, which is why you see all these diseases in both men and women, and why women are experiencing their hot flashes and their perimenopause sooner. Okay? So it's not a coincidence. And so, yeah, you were asleep for such a long time because you were under the influence of all the remedies and the surgeries and the drugs and the alcohol and the parties. And then when they said, okay, it's time for climate change, people didn't believe it until it happened. It happened in 2019, 2020. So once the body forces change and all sorts of diagnosable conditions arose, and then the person breaks down during the energy conversion of change because they were either intolerant to the nutrition or they were told all types of food are poisonous, therefore eat only one type of food, another thus developing malnutrition. Since it is around 50, do people's bodies start breaking down, which is aligned with Dr. Leonard Hayflick's discovery of somatic cells can only redouble itself 50 times over before it must convert to the next evolution of immortalized germline cells. The system identified climate change accelerating the aging process, causing premature menopause and aging in all people. There are people who are younger than me that look like they're older than me. The system already figured out most people are resistant to change, pain, and suffering, so the system expects most people to treat themselves to death and rebel against the inevitable economical changes that are poised to happen very soon, if not already. The outcome is always your intention, as well as the government's intention. Maybe during this great reset, when you finally can sit still and figure out what's going on, you will find a way to survive the changes in your air, food, and water, environment, internal, external climate, and economy, and start rebuilding your body, mind, and spirit. I hope you have what it takes. But if you want a predictable outcome of premature death, you will resist everything at your own hand and inevitably violate the law when you rebel aggressively against your community. We'll see what happens in New York, okay? But I already see how radicalized people are. You already see it. Some of you are in it radicalizing your friends to destroy themselves, okay? And that's the thing. You have to realize now it's out of your hands. Now you have to take care of yourself and your children. You can't stop what's coming. Even if you organize, like people organize on the internet, even if you organize over there personally, what are you going to do? What, the sign in the middle of climate change? Galvanize together like a clump of cancer so the system can go and just do a frequency over you and annihilate that clump of people? That's why you don't want to gather in large like-minded groups of resistance, because you know what's going to happen. Just like what happened in the Redcoats when they were marching in formation. The patriots were hanging in trees, not hanging in trees, but climbing trees and picking off the Redcoats. They were under the ground picking off the Redcoats as the Redcoats are walking in formation, clumped together, sitting ducks. So when you're going off to these conferences, and you have all these anti-V people, all these anti-climate change people, all these anti-chemtrails people, you know how easy it is to turn up the frequencies in that area and cause rapid deterioration in people who are already in deficit? That's why they're galvanizing. Be careful who you follow, because they'll lead you into an area that you will be rapidly deteriorated very easily through the frequencies. Okay, their system already showed you what they can do with lasers and frequencies, amplifiers. And you still don't put yourself in that position to be amplified like that? Okay? And so I wouldn't get so mad that you have the opportunity to stay home and stay safe and take care of yourself. Eat all the food in the food supply. Don't mischaracterize symptoms and pain. There's no way you can stop what's already here. At least you all have TV and YouTube and Instagram and internet and books and movies, Netflix and social media. When I was a kid, as a prototype in this situation of being in lockdowns and restriction and earning my freedom and not getting all the extras except for whatever is traditional, like birthday parties and Christmas and Hanukkah. Okay? I mean, but again, I didn't get to hang out with too many people. There was controlled circumstances where, yes, we had sleepovers And I think I went to a sleepover one time where, yeah, the mother was reading the Bible, and my mom was fine with that. She didn't care. But then there's another sleepover I went to where they're showing The Omen, and I was probably like, okay. I didn't go to any more birthday parties after that I remember. But in the 80s, I had a bed, a desk, a chair, a dresser, books and pens, papers to write with, and tape with music, stuffed animals, and some posters. Yeah, I had Michael Jackson and Boy George and Madonna, and a record player with the strawberry shortcake on there, but no social media, Netflix, and the TV was in the family room. I had a radio, but no video games. So if you start bemoaning your prison in the near future, imagine being raised in the 80s under lockdown by myself most of the time. Conditioning to be autonomous is brutal. And so what does the system want? Well, I had to do all the book reports, read a bunch of stuff, write, even writing lines because I was rebelling. The system wants people to intellectually expand their brain. I read the dictionary, memorized the Israeli national anthem, read so many books, went to bookstores and libraries every weekend. My parents made sure academics are shoved down my throat. Okay, and that requires autonomy and staying in one place when you intellectually expand your brain. This is not about using your body unless you're on OnlyFans, right? Because that's how girls are making money, is they're going on OnlyFans. But when you have to stay in one place, will you use the internet for sex or academics? Because the sports industry is going down the drain. People aren't surviving brutal, aggressive, physiological stress like sports. Many people are becoming very weak from the environment. The brain will be the only thing left to exercise, really, as people are falling apart in our society. And they are. You're seeing all of the diet Sundays. You can blame it on whatever you want. I mean, all those therapies is just fertility. No different than having SCX, getting direct inject. And so with this whole trucking industry, using the truckers, and what threw me for a loop is that Trump went to the Teamsters, a known Democrat institution. So there's the alignment between the Democrats and Republicans, and Trump headed that situation. And then he told the Teamsters to start shutting down New York in reaction to Trump being ousted from New York. Because they only saw one small part of the picture, that Trump was their Lord and Savior. And if Trump is ousted from New York and having to pay this much money, and then even having to go through another trial of hush money, and then maybe be put on the ballot, I don't know. We'll see what happens. That the Teamsters are going to use the truckers against society. So yeah, the Democrats with Republicans taking down New York. And then every other state will follow suit. We already have, and then the immigrants too. The immigrants are going to take the place. That's why there's so much an immigration population in New York, in the hotels, because at some point they're going to be called up to do trucking. And you see the companies that are recruiting immigrants to work for companies that need truck drivers. And so if you have the right wing walking off the job, walking away from their trucks, because they think that they will use that as leverage. The system already recruited so many people from so many different countries to come into America and fill in the gaps where people are walking off the job because they're trying to now leverage their position. Well, sorry, the Democrats already leveraged their position. That's why they brought in all the immigration. Because they knew what was going to happen when finally things were going to settle. So the system wants the old timers to quit and retire to replace with immigrant truckers. That's why they have the immigrant hotels set up in the cities to replace those who quit their jobs on the spot. The system knew. Who was the first voice to say they will boycott New York? It just takes one voice to cause what the system already has planned. And you have no idea where that voice came from. Who fired the first shot, so to speak? It's like the Gulf of Tonkin all over again, right? That's why you be very careful reacting with emotion to anything that goes on. You will be used as a tool. Remember the Teamsters, the truckers union, was the Democrats? Union thugs? My grandfather was a Teamster. My adopted grandfather was a Teamster in New York. I come from a Democrat household. Okay? But they had a point. Slave labor, slave wages, and dangerous conditions was not to be tolerated. So the Union had to formulate a long time ago during the Industrial Age. Remember, I'm a Gen X. I have access to the past, I've been around the past, and can also see the future because they're telling us. And also the present. So now the unions will reconfigure America because the Republican Party has aligned themselves with the Teamsters Union. Not everything is what it seems. But remember, this has been in the works for such a long time. Don't blame anyone. I told you the system will use its own to bring in the needed reconfiguration of the world. The new smart cities. Geofencing. I learned that from Rebecca Ann, who's out in Australia, because they're bringing in some type of geofencing in their world. And so geofencing is a location-based service that creates a virtual boundary around a location. Even my husband's truck, you can program it to only go up to a certain point if you have a kid. My husband's truck can be turned off by anyone, or by the system if it wants to. And so that's why some people are going back to the old gas-powered vehicles. But even then, if you're stuck in traffic because of a shutdown or whatever, and you have all these electric vehicles around you, having gas power is not going to make a difference if you can't even drive because all the electrical ones are sitting in front of you, or you're stuck in traffic, or stuck at a light. So it doesn't matter if you go back to gas powered, you're still around people who are going to be in front of you. So geofencing is a location-based service that creates a virtual boundary around a location. It uses technology such as GPS, radio frequency identification, RFID, Wi-Fi, or cellular data to set up the geofence. Okay, so when a mobile device or RFID tag enters and exits the geofence, an app or software program triggers a pre-programmed action. These actions can include a text message, warning, warning, social media ads, app notifications, email advertisements. Yeah. Okay. And so you see how geofencing, what it does. They can hear what you say. They know where you go. Just like with Yahoo Maps back then when they gave you the route to go by to pass certain establishments. Why did they choose that route versus this route? Because you'd be passing Walmart and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Safeway and all this. So even back then when we were using the Yahoo Maps and printing out the maps and the directions, it forced people to go specific direction to then stop at stores and gas stations and whatever. Okay? And so what the system wants is extremely tolerant, intelligent, intellectually capable people. And yeah, people are going to have to be broken down and then built back up. It's a brutal process. Believe me, I freaking know. It's basically boot camp. So I went through my own boot camp as a child and then voluntarily went to boot camp as an adult, as a young adult. And then the world was its own boot camp because I was so fucking different. People were like, oh my God, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. And then my PMDD was its own boot camp of breaking me down so I can build back up again every single time I was going through that PMS. That's why everything was interesting. I was so down for a certain amount of time, but not enough to be suicidal. But then I was so up and conquering things and doing so many things during the times that I was up. And I knew I have to prepare for the downtime. And that's how I was able to deal with climate change because my climate, my body was changing all the fucking time every month. That's why I'm able to deal with it now. Okay? And so it's a brutal process. It's basically boot camp. You have to earn your way to freedom. You have to exemplify. You can be tolerant to whatever rules and authority that are in place. And yes, everything is controlled through a fear. Because when you have fearless children who break the rules and don't care, they become predatory and destroy. And so yeah, we are in the nanny state because how we have raised our children who don't care with no boundaries, given everything right out of the gate, entitled and spoiled. And so yeah, my childhood was the prototype. Oh, I understand what's going on. I already lived this life and it was brutal. I hated it. That's why I ran away. And so you guys are going to fucking hate it, but it is necessary. And there's nowhere to run to. This is the thing. And I did rebel and I survived it. I just hope with your rebellion that you don't destroy yourself because everything will be self-evident. And there is nowhere to run and hide. You have to face everything or people will destroy themselves by their own hand because they can't handle the pain and suffering of facing whatever it is that they've put to sleep through the remedies, through the surgeries, through their own genetic line. Okay? And so, yeah, and I posted, so Rebecca asked me the question. I thank you, Rebecca, because I know I posted that wrote New York will fall first. And I just said in 1614, the Dutch, under the command of Hendrik Christensen, built Fort Nassau, now Albany, the first Dutch settlement in the North America and the first European settlement in what would become New York. And she's like, well, when? And I'm like, okay, I guess I better be complete about this. And so I was looking for that video of that guy, Steve Ram, already saying, that New York is going to be shut down by the patriots to avenge Donald Trump's court ruling. But then I found another video that was a little bit shorter, but I did post that one too. But I said, but New York already fell in 2001. Many of us did not know it and thought that we could redirect the New World Order, but no. They already expected your reaction. And so this is how the United States will fall, because it was meant to, and people are in a prime position to take the fall. And so I don't know what Trump knew when he knew it. I don't know if he thought that teaming up with the Teamsters was going to be a strategy as retribution for that ruling. I don't know if that was something that was already planned. I have no idea what he knows and when he knew it and what. I have no idea. And I know that Roger Stone was one that helped him come to power, which is great. I mean, hey, so, and who knows, where Roger Stone got his information from and who radicalized him. And before that, who knows what people knew and when they knew it. Okay? And so now just think, you can't assume that it's all conspiracy, and you can't assume it's all organic. There's probably a mixture of so many things. You hear me talk about, well, who's behind all the comments on Facebook? Who's behind all the trolls on Facebook? Who's liking my shit that I can't see on either my business page or through my personal page that talks about Navalny and Putin? I never blocked anyone on one of my posts, but I can't see who it is. Who's able to break through some of the algorithms on YouTube to comment on something to force people to say yes or no or love me or hate me, and me to see it? Is it a glitch? And people are like, oh, they'll take advantage of the glitch and say stuff? When people have commented just these ghost accounts or troll accounts and they've said things that I'm like, I know who would notice, but I don't know how. So you don't know who's what, when. You have no idea anything. Now you gotta realize that the only power you have is over yourself when you think about it. If no one's coming into your house and forcing you to do anything, then you better make the choices that be right for you, whatever it is, without blaming anyone else. Okay? I'm telling you, the system will use its own people to bring in the New World Order. The right will bring in the shutdown, hurting people places, right? Because you're going to have the smart cities and everything else, because the left developed a situation causing the right to react in a very specific way. Your reactions are predictable. That's psychological operations. Many don't understand how manipulated they have been. I couldn't even tell you if Trump knows he's been manipulated to be the patsy for many things. What do people know? When do they know it? People will pass away because of starvation. Their local grocery store couldn't bring in food because of trucker strike. Or the immigrants will be the ones to bring in the food and drive and take jobs away from the truckers. Then people will start attacking their own infrastructure because now they don't have a job. When the immigrants take their job because people walked off the job voluntarily because they were in solidarity against something that happened, they walked off the job trying to prove a political point, and now people are pissed and they will attack their own people. That's going to be the Civil War when you have all these immigrants driving the trucks to bring to the grocery stores, and you have now right-wing thugs that will stop the trucks from driving to the grocery stores, essentially intending to starve out their own community. I already see how that's going to roll out. And even if you have people who aren't even part of that, but they're doing it purposely and then blaming it on the right-wingers, you don't even know. But that situation has now presented itself to happen, regardless if it's organic or contrived. Okay? So now you're like, fuck. I mean, New York's going to be the example. Either people in the rest of the world, in the rest of at least the US and the rest will be like, oh my God, they're presenting a situation where no matter what, the system is going to teach people a lesson. They're going to be the example. New Yorkers are going to be a fucking, like they were back in 2001. And they'll be an example again. And this is where you have to survive your strategy to survive it, because you can't stop it. Even if you galvanized all the truckers, say, okay, we're not walking off the job. Some will. Many will. And then you'll have people who you have no idea who their intentions are, who they are, where they came from. You only know what costumes they wear and what they tell you who they are. And they stop trucks from going into places. You don't even know if that's even the situation. That's the thing, is anyone can develop a storyline. Now you have to survive the storyline and move with the changes if you can. And so everything is happening. It's already happening. More and more immigrants will come in to take place as people walk away from their jobs in protest, or they are not surviving the environment. I mean, already they know people are not going to. They know the boomers are going. A lot of Gen X are having their own issues. A lot of millennials are having their own issues. And so the immigrants are going to take some of the place, especially for the trucking industry, because allegedly they say it's in decline, but who the hell knows? Okay. And so the system was preparing for this day. Skyrocketing food costs, but that's already happening. The system will use whatever side rebels to take down their own, as well as who they think the other side is. Okay? And so the system will use whatever side rebels, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, whatever who side, and they will use whatever side rebels to take down their own, as well as who they think the other side is. So if you're a Democrat, you'll try to take down a Republican. If you're a Republican, try to take down a Democrat. Okay? There will be chaos, people fighting amongst each other, and New York City is a huge city, a lot of boomers. You shut down the whole city, there are deadly ramifications. March will be extremely chaotic, coming in as like a lion, and many lambs will be sacrificed because of it. Then you have the eclipse in April. Things are going to be happening pretty fast. Then the smart cities, everything is by design. The system knows how people will react, and they know how they will be painted. Be careful claiming victory. What did you think you won? When people rebel against the system, they only hurt themselves. I love truckers because my husband is one. But they are being used. It's really unfortunate. We're in for some rough times. And then the immigrants have become a vital part of the trucking industry, labor's force, particularly in the states with high proportions of foreign-born residents such as Texas, California. Immigrants currently make up nearly 19% of the 1.2 million long-haul truck drivers working in the U.S., according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Immigrants in trucking comes from various countries, including Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, China, India, Poland, and Ukraine. California has the highest percentage of immigrant truck drivers, with nearly 47% of all truckers being foreign-born. So you see the writings on the wall. It doesn't matter if the patriots decide to shut down New York. That's fine. The system will shut down New York, even if the patriots aren't enough. They will shut down parts of New York, and people will be suffering. Use as an example, what other parts of New York might get some food from the immigrant truck drivers, or whoever decides not to follow in the footsteps of the patriots. Either way, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. The system knows exactly how they're going to fill in the gaps and develop situations to make people an example. Okay? When someone posts, I've seen this post all everywhere, okay? And I'm just like, oh my God. I want to roll my eyes every time I see it, because I'm just like... Someone said, whenever I'm feeling down, I just remind myself that $1 trillion worth of propaganda didn't work on me. Bullshit. Your reactions, the sides that you take in any of the politics, religion, science, is exactly how the system worked on you. The propaganda worked on you. Okay? The factions that you're part of, everything that you're doing with the diets and the remedies and all the different protective gear. I said the fact that you reacted to the propaganda with whatever choice you made means it worked on you. You will either comply or rebel with the same reaction to disease, another remedy with the same outcome. And then I said that given that we know it doesn't matter what you do or not do as far as the therapies, because people hold disease within, An influential environment will bring up disease faster, especially around influential people. The system will come back later and say everything is a fault of the therapies, public health therapies. And then people will be like, I see, I told you so. But by that time, it doesn't matter. It's too late for anything. You never could stop what was meant to happen. Even if you didn't have any of the VA, CCINESs, everything was going to happen anyways. The system needed something to blame it on. Because even myself, I took none of the V's. You know how sick I was the last 3 years? I had almost every single sickness you can think of. Respiratory, hives, pains, headaches, migraines, everything. Okay, and I have a ganglion cyst. It's not really that bad now, but I mean, I feel it's there, but it doesn't hurt. You saw I posted of that. Okay? But everything that you've ever had an injury, like a ghost, will come back and haunt you, and you have to deal with it and build back better and release the demons. And so so the system needed something to blame whatever was set to happen anyways on. Particle acceleration makes everybody spill out their immune system and cause aggressive infection and diagnosable conditions. And also wake up the negative beast within, activating Pac-Man. Remember I posted a post that talks about life and death. That life is the positive, death is a negative. And when you hold so many negatives, that's like the whole positive times a negative, negative times a positive times a positive, negative times a negative, and all that, right? Whenever you hold so many negatives within you, causing a Pac-Man type of situation, then that's going to be the aging process and also cancer, disease, and chronic illness. And so if you hold more negatives than positives in you, and particle acceleration just speeds up the growth of whatever is most influential, people die faster, they die suddenly, and they also age aggressively. So there always must be a scapegoat when the system needs to make major changes because people are not ready for. Every war has a scapegoat, or else everything becomes mutually assured destruction. What is that? It's like nuclear war. Just what happened, in World War II with Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They bombed Pearl Harbor. We came back and devastated Japan. That's mutually assured destruction. Do you really want that to happen? Or do you want to have something that happens in a slow, controlled situation where only certain people pass away because of their choices, and they're given choices, versus something like a mutually assured destruction? You don't want a mutually assured destruction. You want something that gives people the choice to redirect if they have the capacity to. And if they don't, you can't help them anyways. It doesn't matter. You just watch them flail about until died suddenly. And it fucking sucks, but that's necessary. Or else you have all-out human extinction called Universe 25. All right? And so I write every day to better my writing and communication skills. And so, like I said, life and death is plus and minus. And so fertility, I'm not going to read this all because I'm tired. But fertility means that something grows at the expense of something else. When you have so much fertility, it's relative to what is growing. What is the life that's growing? Is it working against you? Is it working for you? Okay, and so you are the plus, and then there are things that are minus in you that keeps the balance. It keeps the energy conversion going to keep you going. But if you have too many negatives inside your body that you're so fertile, that causes cancer, disease, chronic illness, even children, and then also died suddenly. And so you have to understand how to release the demons of negative from all the fertility of your environment and also the remedies, and balance those two worlds out so the fertility that you have is working for you and replacing the cells that are deteriorating because of changes, and you still stay alive and you're not growing a separate entity that is feeding off your body, mind, and spirit, cannibalizing you like the snake eating its tail, or a Boros. Okay? And so it's balancing out the life and the death in your body and the opposing forces in you. And when people are taking their remedies and their surgeries and all their detoxes and all their prescription drugs, they are developing negative forces working against them. And that's what is causing people to die, is because they already have the negative forces within, and it was allowed to metastasize because they stopped their body from releasing through all the remedies. And they're deficient in nutrition because they're told food is poison. People are sitting ducks. But at least they have someone to blame, right? So they don't have to ever take responsibility. So that's the short of the long of it. So Ohio has, so I knew that China is now becoming defunct. Industry is leaving China. India is going to take up a lot of that force, the workforce. And then Ohio is going to have like Google data center as well as Foxconn, okay, which is part of Apple Industries. Okay, so Ohio, and Texas, Midwest is the place to be. And I said, I noticed a pattern here. Every beginning of a decade kicks off the next set of events, paving the way for the end result. So you get the 1990s, downturn of the prolonged illicit drug era of the 70s, affluence of the 80s, and then you have the 2001, 9/11, and that was the change management, because I did take change management classes and organizational development, business process engineering, re-engineering. And so change management and the rise of panacea-like prescription drugs and herbal remedies, Ritalin and Prozac, prednisone given out like candy for everything. I remember them trying to get me on Prozac for PMS, and I said no. Then you have the 2010, the whistleblowers, the activists, and of course the conspiracy world, the Alex Jones era. And of course all the gurus playing with your chakras and shit. And then the rise of all the health gurus and hot chicks and activism and breatharians. And those are all vegan and vegetarian, saying that food is poison and all that shit. Trying to now starve everyone to set them up so they don't have what it takes to deal with climate change. Then you have 2020, controlled demolition of the West, and then aggressive weather events all over the world. So 9/11, 2001, and 2010, those 2 decades, the last 20 years, set people up to fail this climate change. Why we have so many died suddenly is because of all the Prozac and prednisone and herbal remedies, and then, of course, a conspiracy world, and the rise of all the health gurus and the activism, and the energy healing people, okay? And so 2020 was just like shooting fish in a barrel, basically, because they all set you up to fail 20 years ago. Dominoes are falling. In order to get smart cities, there must be a reconfiguration of the infrastructure. And less people, obviously. And so Georgia's getting a 30,000 lab monkey facility for experimentation. Yeah, that'll be fun. And yeah. And so I'm not going to go through all of this. Yeah, Navalny and all that stuff. And China. I saw what's going on in China. I saw the rise of China and the fall of China the last 20 years. Because I came into China in 2003 when it was just up and coming and they were excited. Then now I'm watching the fall of China. That's crazy. That is flipping crazy. UK, what is it? UK's Dragonfire laser weapons down its first drones. Yeah. That's why you don't want to be in compact groups of people. And so, yeah, we're in the area of Gen X. And I have no issue with Dr. Phil, because he gave me the platform to work from his baseline and to evolve the medical industry and everything. And how do you become smarter than everybody else, even your leaders and authoritarians? You're able to argue a persuasive argument that is completely opposite of your belief system and lifestyle, even your religion and politics and science dogmas. And so if you don't want to become smarter than everybody else and you don't want to see how to redirect yourself so you can save yourself, you'll stay in your one-sided arguments and then be blinded to the other information. Whatever. Okay, I'm not reading that. I don't need to. I'm tired. Fuck, I'm tired. Okay. California tornado threat, And right, I have no animosity towards Dr. Phil. So please, no more hate or anger towards him sent to me. Because he gave me that platform to go and expose both the holistic industry and the allopathic. Both. Yeah. I'm tired. So I'm just gonna get off right now. But oh yeah, I gotta say this. Give me 1 second. It says corruption develops offspring of competition leading to extinction. And so marriage has its own corruption because of sexuality. So I'm aware of my own corruption. But I don't mix in with too much diverse company because that's a lot of release when I come home. But if I do mix in with diverse company, I'll release the demons and suffer through that process, and I'll expect it. And to me, it will be worth it. That's why I pick and choose the times I am socializing, which is very few and far between. Because I'm claiming that, the reason why people are dying is because they're so corrupted. They haven't fixed the corruption within. And what is the indicators of corruption? Well, fertility or cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders, as well as having children. And so the key thing is to be aware of how much your own body, mind, and spirit is corrupt. Predatory corruption manifests into the aging process, addiction, sexuality, disease, even death. How does one attempt to be less corrupt in the future? Not mixing with such diverse company during aggressive climate changes while observing many diet studies in the population. However, everyone has a different tolerance level. To be aware of your own intolerance is based upon BMI and state of your vital organs. No sexuality whatsoever. Companionship is one thing, but aggressive sexuality leading to corruption. Inevitably, a family is another, which is why all diseases, new children bring in new diseases. Families of viruses develop families of vaccines in the modern family of society. When exposed to diversity, release the demons of overgrowth and eat to replace the used up energy. Can one be sexual and not so corrupt? When the system weeds out the most corrupt, deficient people and start over again with a stronger human race who won't let their deficiencies turn into predatory behaviors by prolonging disease and death. The fate of human race is not dependent on any sexual orientation, even straight. The fate of the human race is dependent upon the mind and how well it processes information to keep the machine of the body alive. Okay? And so then the holistic allopathic energy healing world are the controlled soft demolition of society. So you're going to have choices to make, but we're in for some really heady times and some really crazy times. And so I woke up this morning and I couldn't go back to sleep because then I realized that New York will be the first to fall. And it'll be by the right wing with the left wing, the Teamsters. It'll be by both the left and the right. But we set ourselves up for that by reacting so hard the way we did, by resisting so hard. But it had to happen. All right.